everybody, and welcome to Red Wings Rant, where tirades and impassioned pleas for your Detroit Red Wings finally have a home today. Woo! We're gonna celebrate some sweet-ass overtime wins and taking care of the Wild, but quite a road ahead, including, Mike, we got Stadium Series this weekend.
Yes, we do.
In a week from then, Mike, will be post-trade deadline.
Oh.
So may have some new Red Wings to celebrate, some old Wings to say goodbye to. We'll figure that out. Well, when we get closer next week, I think what we've seen the last couple of years is we have seen a lot of trades already this year. But once you get like a week out, so probably after the Stadium Series game, we'll probably see some trades start to pick up. Not saying it'll include the Red Wings, but definitely something to keep an eye
on. Based on some very recent Red Wing news, I would be surprised if we did nothing, because there's definitely a giant center-sized hole we got to fill. And it's from a guy who just got over core surgery and now he's got pectoral surgery.
We'll get into that. Let's wrap up the Four Nations face-off. Mike, It's all over. We were sad. I haven't been this sad watching a hockey game, in a long time. Obviously, we're gonna rewind the clock back to when oh man. I don't know if I was quite that sad, but it definitely had Red Wings playoff sadness attached to it.
That day we traded Bertuzzi and Larkin cried.
Yeah. Still, incredible atmosphere that was built around that, and that's like before the game, after the game. I was out to breakfast with my wife the next morning. And like ESPN is on, two different versions of ESPN are on, and I'm basically just watching what's his name, flip-flopping on the two ESPN channels. Like who did he have a talking head with at the time? PK Subban. And it was just, first he was on ESPN and he's on ESPN 2. And then ESPN would have a new show, so PK would join that show. And then ESPN 2 would have a new show, and then PK would join that show. And it was just like the whole world wanted to know, like, what is this thing called hockey? And it was funny watching it go down. But clearly this is like a big moment for the NHL and for hockey. And I think I just disappointed my son. Is he really bummed that I started podcasting? Aw. Well,
old guy.
I love you, buddy. Do you want to say hi to the people?
Is Teddy coming?
You want to come online? You want to come say hi? Do you want to say hi?
Oh,
right. Kids just finished swim practice.
Hi.
Addie, say hello to the Red Wings Rant community. Say hi. Do you want to say hi? No. Okay. Teddy, do you want to say hi? Oh, did anybody hear that?
Yeah, it came on the mic.
Hi.
Oh, hey, buddy. Come here. Give me a kiss.
Oh, what a beautiful family affair. Look at that.
Yep, as I abandoned them.
All right, guys, stay the hell out. Goodbye.
Now lock that door. Okay, where were we? Right. Okay, hockey. Big moment for hockey. I have heard some fun takes. Probably one of the best conversations I heard was Jeff Merrick and Greg Wyshynski, where Jeff Merrick was like, the NHL has to capitalize on this. And Greg Wyshynski, who works for ESPN, and it would be great if people watched ESPN for the NHL, actually said, no chance. You still have Columbus Blue Jackets versus Ottawa Senators. Nobody cares about that game. So every 4 years in the Olympics and World Cup, people will care about hockey. And I thought about that, and I was like, you know what? I've never tuned in to another baseball game that isn't the Tigers. Definitely not another basketball game that isn't the Pistons.
Hey, what the hell?
unless it's the playoffs. So,
well, yeah,
I don't know.
You know what? You go to hell, Matt.
Do you watch? What are you
Regular-
watching besides Detroit sports?
I'm watching regular season sports all the time. I'm watching Wemby. I'm watching Luca. I'm watching Ellie De La Cruz. I'm watching players.
Wemby is appointment television. I will say maybe the best chance the NHL has right now is that Alex Ovechkin is probably going to break the goals record. So I think that will be appointment TV, but
that whole exchange with Suppan having to explain the game of hockey, it just kind of reminded me of like Caitlin Clark doing well, and then everyone had to explain who the good players were in the WNBA.
Yeah.
Like, oh, that's so cool. It's not just Caitlin Clark. There's like a whole league of women who play. That's neat. Well, let's learn about that together. But yeah, it's just the uninitiated who never bothered. So that's us. Also, Dan B says, hello, cutie pie. Dan, don't even pretend that was for Matt's kids. That was for me and Matt, wasn't it? You sly dog,
Thanks,
you.
Dan. We got to throw out there Mike Rupp's comments on Dylan Larkin just to wrap up this conversation. I like it. But and across, NHL media, everybody's like, man, if the Red Wings make it into the playoffs, watch out for a new version of Dylan Larkin. But yeah, Mike Rupp's comments on the Four Nations was, I think Larkin should have a letter on his jersey come the Olympics next year. Big praise.
I mean, that's a big letter for a third liner.
Oh, snap.
No, I love that he was on the third line, and then he basically, proved his mettle and earned a letter of sorts. So,
well, you wonder if he was on the first line, would Dylan Larkin have left Connor McDavid wide open between the circles?
Anyway. Probably not. No.
Okay, so Red Wings
huge move. The Red Wings trade has begun. We got got rid of Ville Husso. That was a hard sentence to say. For future considerations.
Mike, we are just buried in future considerations right now. Steve Yzerman stockpiling all of the future considerations he could possibly get across the NHL. I'm kidding, of course. That's a reference to the Wallman trade. Mike, here's this. Let's talk about this because Ville Husso now off the books, but he was in the AHL. We didn't really need to be concerned about it. And let's combine this conversation. Andrew Kopp out for the rest of the year. Surgery on his left pectoral tendon. How does this affect the cap? Well, just a week ago, Mike, we were talking about deadline cap space would be around $13 million. Puckpedia has us at $13 million.
Okay.
And that's because Andrew Kopp going on, oh no, we lost Mike. Mike, where did you go? Mike's gone. Anyway, if you weren't aware of this, ladies and gentlemen, so we'll bounce around here between Kopp and Ville Husso, the LTIR benefits are only after you've gone beyond the cap. So if you're not beyond the cap, you're not really getting any of those extra benefits. I saw some people talking about maybe future and not future considerations is in regards to what Steve Yzerman loves to pull in for all of his former players. But maybe the future consideration is Steve's going to go beyond the cap now that he's got an extra $5 million to play with. Mike is back, everybody. Just to quickly recap, all I was saying, Mike, was that the LTIR cap benefits only come into play after you go past the cap.
Right. So you don't just get 17 mil. You got to get to 14. Then you get 3. I got you.
Right. So long story short, maybe if Steve really wants to go to town, he could bring in some huge contracts to get a real push going here for the playoffs. But I think if we're all, honest with ourselves, nobody's anticipating that from Steve Yzerman, especially now when things seem to really be looking up with the team he's built, the prospects he's got coming up. The Todd McClellan coaching era really seems to be working out as, we pull in another tiny win streak here. But I mean, all in all, things are looking up for the Wings. Based on what we know with Steve, I don't think that'll come into play. So that the salary implications won't matter here. 13 million. I think if Steve's bringing in a guy, which I know you called out earlier, and we'll talk about this, the loss of Andrew Kopp, but Steve's pulling in a guy. It's just going to be to make sure we're icing a comparable roster to what we had before the Kopp injury. I don't know if he's really going to go above and beyond to try and like upgrade it, but we will, of course, get into some of those options in a minute here with some updates on some of the names around the league we've talked about in the last little bit. But that being said, Mike, I thought you brought up the best point in the text message between the two of us regarding Andrew Kopp. The very moment we started to see a guy who is going to play great between Alex DeBrincat and Patrick Kane.
He was finally playing well.
Boom, yeah, boom goes the pick.
Yeah, it's not great news. It's a devastating injury. I don't know. We've seen Cody Rhodes come back from it. If people want a WWE comparison, Decoy, if you're out there, that's for you, buddy. But yeah, I mean, the timing of these events, it could come at a worse time, right? Like right after the trade deadline. Instead, you have an opportunity to kind of outsource some help for this roster, because I don't know if who's that guy that called up Dries or Drees.
Yeah, Sheldon.
There's Shiner. If that's what you want to do, I don't know how serious you are about the rest of the season in terms of like making the playoffs and winning a round. So when I saw that Husso move, I was really excited because you can absorb basically any single contract, at face value, and that can kind of be a negotiating ploy where it's like, no, we don't need you, other team. We don't need you to eat 10 to 25% of the contract. We can absorb it, so we're fine with that. Go ahead, send the whole thing over, and by us doing that, maybe we don't have to give up as much draft capital or a less highly touted prospect for whoever we're bringing in. So I don't know if that means we're going to get an expensive defenseman out of Chicago, Matt. Maybe a really expensive forward out of Vancouver, Matt. But it just leaves the door open where if you didn't have this cap space, you didn't have that opportunity. But yeah, I see I don't know if you're going to roll into a few of the options here, which are not very sexy to me. I don't know if Brock Nelson does a lot for you.
Nope.
I feel like he's in a long line of cops and coppers where I don't really need another one.
Well, look, here's the thing. If you want to replace Andrew Kopp and make sure you have that represented on your roster and make that push, I think when you're talking about comparables here, I think you can replace Andrew Kopp here with a Brock Nelson, and you're not too concerned with. Well, actually, you're not concerned at all. We'll put it that way. His contract expires, and his AAV right now is $6 million, and like the Puckpedia calculation said, we could bring in 13 mil contracts. And he's valued right now with a net rating of 7.9 on the offensive side. Just sort of a not winning, not losing too much on the defensive side. It's from a size perspective, I think you could get representation here in Brock Nelson to replace Andrew Kopp. I think from a defensive perspective, you're not getting a 1-for-1. But you could potentially have a better fit here on the second line between DeBrincat and Kane. But it isn't anything that, with this being the number one name on most trade boards, you don't want to overspend. I feel like
the way the Athletic puts their boards together, it's more about availability than ability.
Yeah,
because I feel like the Islanders are like, yeah, you want to give us some draft picks for Brock Nelson? Be our guest. Be our guest for this 33-year-old, $6 million guy.
Brick. Brian calling Brock Brick. That was a hard. That's a lot of B names I just threw in there. But calling Brock Nelson Brick Nelson, I think it was a typo, but I love it.
I'd be more inclined to pick him up if his name was Brick Nelson. Matt, your burner account is still on the Bo Byram train, which I'm also a passenger on that train. I don't know what has to happen for that to transpire. But performance art, throwing a wrench in the wheel, saying unless it's longer term for the player that we're acquiring, so he doesn't want a rental. Unless it's longer term, a trade makes no sense.
Yeah, and I think we've even talked about this with performance art before. I think he's 100%. We're in agreement there. If the end of the trade deadline is coming up, nobody's calling the Islanders. I don't have any problems spending this money, like spending the $6 million or whatever it's going to end up being for the last 25 games of the season. I don't care about that. So if we're giving up less than what, I would say the Athletic is projecting here, that it's going to be a first round pick, at least one for Brock. But I think there's also a world here where we all see the same thing in Brock Nelson and say, well, this isn't really first round material. I'll give you this kind of thing. And then if it got to that point where it was less than a first rounder, Mike, I'd screw around with a second round pick. I value second round picks. That's not a lot. I think we've talked about it in the past. Like once you hit like not even like pick 10 or pick 15, when you hit like pick 7, everybody's on this trajectory of like 3 to 5 years before they're in the NHL. So it's like a second round pick for Brock Lesnar. Brock Nelson.
He wishes
for Brock Lesnar. Yeah, bring in Brock Lesnar for a second round pick. Let's see what happens.
Yeah.
But no, I'd screw around with that. But I think with where the market is at, that's not gonna happen. But if it were, I'd sniff around there if the price was low enough. But I don't think that's gonna happen.
Yeah, I mean, if you can seduce them into anything but a first round pick, do it. Because I mean, a big goober like that, if there's a way to move Casper down and put Brock, banging away for Larkin and Raymond, it's not that he's a terrible player. I think we're just afraid of the what we'd have to give up in return.
But yeah, the conversation would have to continue too, because like you really got to, and we've talked about this the last couple of weeks. We'll bring it up again. You've really got to stretch to make Seth Jones work. Is that a player that the Red Wings could use on their team right now? Yeah. Obviously, there's a huge cap number. That's an implication there. And it's slowing any team's desire to bring in Seth Jones. Like, who wants to pay that for the next 5 or 6 years? What is it? 9.5? 9.5.
Yeah. Yep.
So there's that. But you go down this list, and for podcast listeners, this is the Athletics list here. So I'm not saying this is the end all be all, but let's treat this as like an example. Brock Nelson, Rickard Rakell, Seth Jones, Rasmus Ristolainen, Ryan Donato, Dylan Cousins, Bowen Byram, Scott Laughton, Brandon Tanev. Okay, Mikko Rantanen. That gets me a little warmed up. But is he really available? All right, we'll talk about that in a sec. Braden Shen, Kyle Palmieri, Carson Soucy. Like, I'm not getting excited unless you're taking a huge risk here. Yeah.
Matt, you could push back, but performance art was saying, do we really want to put Casper down? And I think I only meant that Brock it'd be an interesting first line, and I feel better about Casper carrying on a second line with like Kane and DeBrincat. I think that would be a pretty cool lineup. But it's a moot point because I don't think they're going to get Brock anyway. But how's Mikko Rantanen still on this list?
So the problem is, I'm glad.
Is it because he scored he scored 1 point since the trade?
We never set each other up like this. So the story here is that Carolina offered Mikko a big old contract, and Mikko Rantanen was like, "Hey, I'm a human being. I'm not prepared to be taken away from the team I thought I was spending my career with, being traded to Carolina, and a month later making a decision for the next 8 years on my life. That was his response. And
That's
Carolina
a
was like,
reasonable statement. Yeah.
absolutely. And Carolina was like, all right, fine. Then you're back on the market. We'll see what we can do here. And the story is too, like what's connected to this is that teams are inquiring on Mikko Rantanen. It's not necessarily that Carolina's shopping him, but the story is they're taking those phone calls. They're not hanging up right away. So it's getting back to like Elliot Friedman is that they're taking the phone calls. They're not trying to push him out.
Are we floating what he thinks about Coney dogs and deep dish pizza, or?
I don't know, because it comes back to the same, like, what price are you willing to pay? Because Mikko does seem a little hurt. You know, like, it's one of those things where he was in a good situation. He got pulled away from it. And there's another name that we could talk about here. And you know what? We could just bring it up. We got another name to talk about, Mike, who's a forward.
Oh, boy.
He just happens to be a center.
You guys are ready for the love fest. Here we go.
Now, of course, I had to include the J Fresh player card because projected WAR.
So I saw one complete. What's the opposite of reputable? Because that's the publication I saw. It said EP40 on his way to the Wings. Matt, I know you have your burner YouTube commenter page, but do you also have a secret website you haven't been telling us about where you write EP40 propaganda articles?
Yeah, like just trying to stir up the SHIT because I can hear the kids right outside the door.
So why do we still think that his being moved out of Vancouver is a real thing?
So we could start with for anybody
besides his career low production this season after he signs his besides that after he signs his monstrous mortgage deal to stay in Vancouver.
So this came from Rick Tocchet. This was after this was a couple nights ago. This is Sunday night. There it is. So Rick Tocchet on Elias Pettersson. We've talked about how he has to move his feet and can't double clutch with the puck. I think he's waiting for something. Should I read this more dramatically? I think he's waiting for something. I don't know if it's a lack of confidence in a shot, but as soon as he has room, he's got to take it, and he's just got to blast it. I'd rather him just rip a puck right now. He's not moving his feet. I thought today some shifts he was moving his feet.
I think you got to leave room in between the delivery to take a deep drag of a cigarette because this coach has just had it.
He finishes with, but 6-on-5 there at the end. It's the same thing, waiting. If he just takes 3 or 4 strides, I don't know if it's a mental block right now, all year, but he's got to move his feet. When Pettersson was asked about his confidence level,
this is awesome, you guys.
Pettersson's response is, it's more annoying dealing with the media.
Wow. Taken right out of the Nikola Jokic playbook. Got him. Love it.
Yeah, it's pretty wild right now that this is a team that made their choice between Pettersson and JT Miller, essentially, because Carolina was also putting in a bid for Pettersson. I don't know if you remember those stories when Rantanen did end up getting picked up by Carolina. The story popped out that they were looking into Pettersson. When JT Miller got brought up, they're like, all right, we're good. We'll go to we're going to go to Colorado and pick up Rantanen. But here's the thing with Pettersson. I think he's got a coach that's not supporting him right now. I think he's been put in this situation now where an entire team was told you will now support Elias Pettersson. And he's in a situation that's just, it's not great. And I don't blame him. Like you mentioned, his career low numbers. I don't blame him because this has been a rough year. And clearly his dealings with the media aren't really improving anything for his mental state. You don't often get players making those sorts of comments. It's more annoying dealing with the media. This guy needs to get pulled out of there. This is something too where I thought it was important. Like we need to share like what has been the 3-year span of this guy's numbers. And you could see he's been one of the top forwards in the league.
Wow.
It's just, yeah, go ahead.
If you want to add a little bit of smoke to this fire, this season is the last season that the Canucks can do whatever they want with him. Because it looks like next year, starting 2025, 2026, his contract has a full no movement clause. So then he gets to dictate where he gets traded. This is the season to make it work. Or, get whatever they want for him and trade him wherever the hell they want because they're fed up with him.
Yeah.
So yeah, just if it's not this trade deadline, then he gets to do whatever he wants, and it'll probably be really stressful for everyone involved. But yeah, just something to keep an eye out for there.
Yeah, I think that's part of the reason why too, like Vancouver's kind of treating this as like, all right, this is our last chance to get rid of this guy. But I also think they're living in a world right now where Pettersson wouldn't mind getting moved. So I don't know how much they'd have to worry. Like he might just waive that no move clause. But yeah, I don't know. I'm all for it. If something came about to bring Pettersson onto this team, and again, I'll sacrifice one name from this top six that isn't Dylan Larkin or Lucas Raymond. Everybody else is on the chopping block. I'm sorry, ladies and gentlemen, that does include Mr. Marco Casper. Oh yeah, includes Casper, includes DeBrincat. No problem. See you later. But as much as Pettersson's struggling right now, I think this is a destination that'll work for him. This is a destination where we will happily embrace him. And I swear to, if he steps foot in LCA wearing a Red Wing jersey, you guys better go nuts. You better go crazy. But yeah, this is certainly, if it's not going to happen now, it's probably going to happen at the draft or before the draft, because these two sides, the Pettersson side, the Canucks side, they're begging for this relationship to end.
Yeah, I think that there is a likelihood of him getting moved. I just don't think the Red Wings have the guns to do it, because we'd have to completely deplete, our cachet of draft picks and prospects. Because we just don't have. I don't think we have the NHL guys to make the trade happen unless they're really enamored of DeBrincat having another season where he's pacing for about 40 goals. I just don't know if we have the mustard to do it. I think it's an interesting move. I think that moves like this, they're gonna kind of make you go, ooh, that's what we had to give up, because that's kind of what it takes in the NHL. So it would take DeBrincat, probably somebody I love, like Axel, man, you son of a bitch, you can't do this to me. And picks, but yeah, I think he might get moved. I don't know if we have the mustard to do it. Then we had a few comments coming in here. Brian saying, Matt, he wants to jumpstart his flailing career. Talk about EP40 and his down season this year. Performance Art thinks he's mentally spent. Guys, I can't harp on it enough. I just feel like it's DeBrincat in Ottawa, where he's like, I'm cooked here. I need to go somewhere else. So, I mean, if that dude was playing under Larkin's leadership, a guy who can, emotionally take an entire locker room on his back, I think they'd be in pretty good hands. Or McClellan, just telling the guy, hey, I don't give a shit if you move your feet or not. Just play effing hockey. How about that? And then EP40 is suddenly, reinvigorated. I think this is a great environment for a guy like that to kind of revitalize his career, especially since he's just a season out from scoring 100 points in a season. Dan B is saying, let's bring in everybody, Pettersson, Rantanen, and Cousins. Thank you, Dan B. Do we have one other one? Oh, and Performance Art, Matt. I kind of like what he says here. Not that I love the player, but I do agree that the likeliest Thunder move from the Red Wings, he says, I think Cousins fits us better with untapped talent. I don't know if that's necessarily the case, but I think that making a move for Cousins and Byram, that would be our big blockbuster. I don't know if we have the mustard for EP40, but I feel like we could get a center and a defenseman from Buffalo.
Yeah, it's definitely like a part of the conversation we need to address, because again, this is going to be filling a need. You're definitely taking a risk here, just like with everybody. So if you're moving on from like a Casper, like Matt throws out there, Casper's like 10 points behind EP40 right now, and he costs 10 million less. And then performance are Casper, are you crazy? So you take a risk when you bring in or trade away anybody. The risk here with Dylan Cousins is like it's sort of the same. You just haven't seen the same level of production. I'll say on the defensive side, like the ability to suppress offense the same way that EP40 can bring it to the table. I think, man, there's some replays we really got to go over for the Wings and Casper and Raymond this past weekend that are just blowing my mind, because that top line, they don't just have a lot of skill, and it's led by Lucas Raymond, but man, do they back check well. So there is that, but you're taking that risk either way. And you're asking yourself, do you have enough in your prospect pool to replace something that Casper's bringing to the table? And are you missing that next level of scoring talent that Dylan showed certainly in his pre-NHL days, had that high ceiling. Moving forward, we had a really nice, 30 or 40 goals, but a 30 goal season. There we go. To me, that's something where the price here has to be so much lower than what we were just talking about with Elias Pettersson. I don't think anybody's inferring that the two prices would be similar at all, but the price would have to be so much lower. And I think you're just waiting for Buffalo to get to that point where they're like, all right. We'll settle. We'll hold on to some of this cap. And Dylan, good day. That might be where this is waiting right now, sort of a stalemate. And you could be right too, because right underneath Dylan, like you mentioned, is a Bowen Byram who fit. Like, this is something right now where before you were bringing in Dylan Cousins because the price might be low because he was struggling, right? And you see the potential for 30 goals, and you have some space where there's some veterans who need a center. There's some opportunity there to see if that could reignite him. There was a real fit here. Bowen Byram, not that I think it's just a different story. Like, not that there isn't as strong a fit like before with Andrew Copp being gone for Dylan Cousins, but Bowen Byram was just always a fit. Like, this was always just like, yes, we need a left shooting defenseman. The price is right. I think he's performed poorly enough that contract for the next one that's coming up in his RFA year isn't going to hurt you too bad. But this was another guy who's projected, for what he's being asked for, to do quite well. He's already moved around. It is something where Buffalo doesn't need this many left side shooting defensemen. They've already invested quite a bit in their defensive core. And if you're on the trade block, that's right, you sniff around it.
That's not a talent drop for them. That's a cap thing, right? Are they going to want to pay him, the raise that he's going to be asking for this summer? Maybe. It's not how a lot of teams necessarily set up their cap sheet, but that's the main reason that the Buffalo moves look more feasible. Just because Cousins not pumping in the points, he is expensive, and Byram, you'd have to give him some sort of contract this summer. That's why they feel a little more feasible to me. But I did want to point out one nauseating response here from Dan B, saying he proposed a Cousins and Byram deal today on a rival show off the post. Is it Mike Augello? Mike Augello said the return would have to be Raymond and Pellica? Woo-hoo-hoo-hoo! Absolutely not, my man. You couldn't get one of those guys for those two guys. I'm sorry.
That's insane.
That is a wild hot take. That is a wild take. Absolutely not.
Like, the idea that Buffalo...
If you made that call and you just started to say the first letter of Raymond, Steve hangs up. Absolutely not. No. That is a wild claim, Dan B. Mike should have his press credentials revoked for that comment. And
Yeah,
Matt, your burner account says Cousins has spent tons of time this year with Tage Thompson. Alex, is it Tuch?
Alex Tuch.
Damn it. How do I always screw these up? And he's still unable to put up points. Yeah, not a lot of defense there. That's why I feel like he'd be doing a buy low, and absolutely not. He's not worth Lucas Raymond. That's crazy. That's crazy.
The idea that Buffalo would think that they would get like a for sure, like, well, I already dubbed him superstar Raymond. What was that, about a month ago? I was like, nope, we got it. We got our superstar. It's done. There's no question about it anymore. To think that we would make that trade is just insane. It's insanity.
I mean, I wouldn't put even. I know there's the debates about, if you are trading a wing for a center, the winner of the trade is the guy who gets the center. I still wouldn't put Lucas out there for EP40. Sorry, Matt. Absolutely not. No. Are you thinking about it over there? I saw your eyes going back and forth like that old clock of the cat that just goes left and right.
I was like thinking like, I already made that comment. I'm not touching Lucas.
I definitely wouldn't do it for Cousins, and I still wouldn't do it for EP40. No. But yeah, Dan B, I didn't think that you said that, buddy. I just think that Mike guy should have his credentials revoked. That is insane. That is insane. And then Matt, I don't know how much more you want to touch on Addison too, because he's eating up a lot of the comments here, where people are just wondering about that acquisition.
I don't know where to even take this. I mean, we're talking about. Am I missing something? I mean, Henderson, Silver Knights, AHL, Kalen Addison. Is that really?
What we're about. There's like 5 comments in there for Kalen. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just curious where this is coming from. Is it just like, well, there's no real cost here? Like, what? Somebody sell me on this, because I'm looking at a guy that's also got some pretty low numbers in the AHL right now.
Last season he was awesome, man. He had 17 points, 72 NHL games played. He hasn't had any games played this year, but maybe.
I don't know what I'm missing. For the fact that it has popped up so many times in the comments.
Is Kalen Addison in the comments? I think maybe.
Okay, Kalen.
Welcome aboard.
Which account are you, sir?
I think he's Matt. He's the Matt.
Who was the first person to mention it? But yeah, I am so confused by this, guys. Somebody's got to give me more information here, because this isn't adding up for me. And I can admit, I am not in on the Kalen Addison conversation. You guys are having that one without me.
That is a real deep cut. That is a mega deep cut. Also not if you're trying to find guys that we could trade a 7th round pick for, well then I think we found them.
Yeah, Jared's got it. -23 so far this year.
If you're trying to find a player that the other team would have to include draft compensation for you to eat his contract, well, you found him.
Brian, did you like go to what was it, the Silver Knights?
Funny cigarette today? Yeah.
Did you go to a Silver Knights minor league game and you saw a couple fights? Oh, he's a young go-getter. All right, Brian, I'm gonna pass respectfully.
I'm gonna pass disrespectfully. Brian, you're crazy. What are you talking about over there? You're crazy.
Okay, so like I made the episode titled like, we're gonna need points. We need to trade for players if we want those points. Because even after that Minnesota Wild game, we are still, Mike, number 1 by far in the strength of schedule left for the rest of the season. And we've talked too about our schedule going forward. I mean, let's do this actually real quick. I did want to highlight, like, last year, Mike, we had the second easiest schedule to end the season. So maybe it's all malarkey. Maybe none of it matters. But I'll say this: a year ago, we were 4th in the division. at 72 points.
Did we have the same record? Is that true? Were we 30? No. That can't be true.
And
we're 30, now, 22, and 6. Are you kidding me? You're kidding.
Oh, we are, but they're different. That's 6 points off and a game. So this is a year ago. All right, so for podcast listeners, what we're looking at is the standings from a year ago in the Atlantic Division. Again, Detroit in 4th. We had the first wild card spot with 72 points in 59 games. Fast forward a year. We were 4th in the division. Now with 66 points, 4 points behind the Tampa Bay Lightning. And again, first wild card spot. But again, we are pulled back a little bit on the points percentage, which is wild considering last year was like the lowest points percentage to make the playoffs in years. And this year it's getting challenged again. This is wild. This is wild, crazy stuff.
Nobody sets a floor like Steve Yzerman's Red Wings.
So we beat Minnesota 3-2. We've got Columbus coming up on the 27th. And again, yeah, we beat Minnesota. Gives a shit. And then we've got Columbus coming up again on the 1st of March. And, this is it, Mike. Leading up to the trade deadline, you've got tough games against Carolina, one on the 7th against Washington. Mike, you and I, we're going to watch us play Utah on the 6th.
I have half a mind to buy a Columbus ticket. I just want you to know.
I hope that other half catches up. That would be really cool. You mean for tomorrow's game or for Saturday?
Saturday.
Right. Okay. So, Brian does he does a great job setting us up. Besides the Kalen comment, Brian, normally you're on point for setting us up. So Brian calls out there April, the gauntlet. Because for March, then you've got Ottawa, Buffalo. You are again going up against Carolina, Vegas, and Washington, which is no easy. You know what? Screw it. I'm calling it. Like after this Buffalo game, look at it. Carolina, Vegas, Washington, Vegas. Like going back to back to back to back with teams that will be fighting for the President's Trophy. All right. Then it calms down a little bit again with another Utah game. Then you've got Colorado. You're still going to be fighting for a playoff spot with Ottawa. Like both mentions of Ottawa, like this, no wonder, Mike, the strength of schedule is insane for us. Ottawa, then Boston at home. I mean, I'm really just rattling through every game now, but everything looks so difficult. April 1st to St. Louis. Okay, whatever. But then you've got Carolina, Florida, a break with Montreal, Florida, Tampa, Dallas, New Jersey, and Toronto. Mike, you've got, all right, 2 games with Columbus are winnable, right? Let's label them as such. 2 against Columbus, Utah, Buffalo, another Utah, and a Montreal on April 8th. What do we have, 25 games left? And I've got 6. Not to say, I'm not saying we lose every other game. I'm just saying every other game besides those 6 is a nut punch. It's going to be a grind them out and just absolutely sweating it till the end. What's up?
Oh no. Dan B saying back to back against Columbus. Hopefully goes better than against Ottawa did. Woo-hoo-hoo-hoo! Dan B dropping a bomb at 7:25 on a Wednesday night.
Never forget.
I remember where I was. Do you remember, Dan? I was thrown up in the toilet. Oh my goodness. And then Jared pointing out, Jared, what's up, bud? Buffalo, Montreal, only 2 teams not in or taking a sniff of the playoffs. But I guess just looking at this big picture, because I did see there's a pretty strong consensus that why are we getting rental players to just make it into the playoffs this season? Rental just means you don't think that this guy's going to want to re-sign here, and it's a pretty good locker room. I mean, some guys like hanging around here. DeBrincat liked it. Kane came back. Tarasenko had options. So I guess what I'm getting at is, do you think that this team, as constructed, is going to triumph over these 2 months? And then should no moves be made, it's going to be a Nate Danielson and an Axel away from being a perennial playoff team. Because if not, we're not a sexy free agent destination, so you got to make some trades, my man.
Can I be? I'm gonna go like anti myself right now for a second.
You're gonna be anti yourself?
I guess.
I thought that's what your other burner account was for when you put in comments as Matt. But go ahead. Yeah.
I don't know if this trade that I pulled back up for the YouTube viewers, I pulled up the Elias Pettersson player card. I don't know if this trade makes me feel better about these next 2 months of hockey. So you're bringing up a great point, Mike. Is there a trade that's out there that's going to make you feel really good about these next 2 months?
I think the only way I feel good about these 2 months is if we weaponize our cap space, only trade draft picks. And my God, if you screw this up and trade Axel, I'm going to lose it. Unless it's, my God, some upper echelon talent like this, then, what are we talking about? If we're crossing our fingers for prospects or picking up guys who've scored 100 points at the NHL level. You got to take a long, hard look at these next 2 months and then what's going to happen in the offseason. Because you're not a free agent destination anymore. I mean, if you mean by free agent destination, you signed a has-been with, one hip, or Tarasenko, who hasn't been good in, 4 or 5 years, maybe since COVID. So
he got a goal the other day, or just
he did get a goal. I'm just
one.
saying, like top level talent. So if you don't think you're getting that, then you're just rubbing your rabbit's foot, hoping that, the kids are going to make it. The kids will be all right, to borrow a line from The Who.
I don't think they mind.
No?
The Who.
Oh, yeah. Thanks, Who. Friend of the show.
You didn't like that?
Burner Matt says, do you watch Grand Rapids games? No, I do not.
Nope. I do not have the time. I'm sorry, myself.
Oh, man. Brian coming in hot saying Nate ain't that great. Talking about Nate Danielson.
Oh, maybe that's where Matt was coming from. This is Nate's first year, Matt throws out there. He was playing as high as 1C and more than holding his own. You're out of your mind if you think he's not good. Can I just say, I think there is a disconnect, and I think Matt's talking about Brian's comment, but there is a disconnect between, like, I think all of these guys are good. Even Andrew Kopp is a really good hockey player. There, I said it.
Did we need really?
He's a good hockey player.
He's a perfectly adequate hockey player.
No, I mean it. Like, more than adequate. Andrew Kopp, like, hot take. He's more than adequate. But no, it's not to say that I think we need to get like this guy sucks, but there are like these different levels that these guys are at, and it's just we've seen EP40 be like really, really, really good. And I would stress Mike's point with Nate is that we're saying hopefully he's a good middle six. Like, hopefully he's a good middle six. We're not even saying like maybe he'll overcome that ceiling that was created for him. No, we're saying like hopefully he'll get there. We haven't seen him play a single NHL game yet. I'm not saying he will be bad, but you're still in the hope world. And if the conversation got to like, can we have Nate Danielson? I'm okay with that. I don't know.
If you follow Detroit sports, I urge you to remember what it was like when we traded for Miguel Cabrera and Dontrell Willis, and we gave up Cameron Maben and was it Jacob Turner? Two incredible prospects. My God, can't miss for an excellent third baseman and a pretty wild pitcher. And we ended up getting one of the greatest hitters in the history of Detroit Tigers baseball.
The greatest.
It was pretty scary because you're giving up two pretty sexy prospects.
Very sexy.
Incredibly sexy. Like,
that's I'm just gonna be the hype man on your comments now on your sentences.
And I guess you're hoping that Nate Danielson can score 100 points. You know that EP40 can score 100 points. It's a different thing. It's a hope and a wish versus a resume. I've already done it. And I know you guys some of you are nervous that he's had a poopy season. I please, lest we forget the great Alex DeBrincat, who was not happy in Ottawa and did not play well. And now he's in Detroit having a great time scoring goals. I mean, these guys are human beings. I don't think EP40 is a broken player. I think he's just not having a great time in Vancouver. If that at all makes it a lower buy, oh my God, jump all over that. Please.
Matt throws out there, how many people were screaming about Nate making the team out of training camp before he went back to juniors 2 years ago? Dude, Matt's calling me out. Like I was like, shit, this would be really this would be sweet as hell if we found a guy who's just gonna storm his way onto the roster. I don't know. I can't stress enough that I think Matt's arguing with the comments here, but I can't stress enough. I like Nate Danielson. I think that's why he's a part of like one of the first names that comes to mind when we're talking about trades. Because I think the rest of the NHL wants a guy like Nate Danielson. But you know, at some point we gotta move. And I know we've made this point way too often. It gets boring. You know, it's gonna make everybody throw up. But at some point we got to move away from the players that we're hoping for and get into the players that have proved it and see what happens there. Because I do think you have an asset there, but just like anybody in the NHL, you got to decide, just like any business, actually what I mean to say, you have assets. You don't necessarily, that doesn't mean that you hang on to them, you know?
Yeah, and I think the other thing too is I don't know if Nate Danielson's going to be scoring 100 points. You know, he's not doing it this year. He's probably not doing it the next year. He's probably not doing it the next year. And how old is Larkin going to be at that time? So then you're looking at the Larkin timeline, and he's going to be, you know, entering his early 30s and then mid 30s. So it's a little bit like, do you think that Larkin plus Lucas plus Seider plus, you know, sexy acquisition at trade deadline can make some moves? Or are you willing to wait, you know? And I'm very excited about Axel. You guys know I want that Sandin Pelka jersey more than anything. As soon as he picks a number, that's what I'm buying. But are they going to be able to like still have this Larkin core, you know, in 3 to 4 years when those guys are going to be ready? I don't know if you can do that. Maybe you guys want to make the case that just means Larkin's not part of that core anymore. That you're looking at Lucas, Casper, and Seider. But I don't know. I mean, just knowing how important Larkin is, I wish there was a way we could make this work now, even if we are sacrificing some future, because there's not a lot of Larkins, right? That speed is, not in every NHL body. So,
and we've made this point too. This is probably the last point on Pettersson, and then I think we're good, and then we can just hit the comments here. But Mikko Rantanen, Mike, is probably going to hit the free agent market, and he's going to get a $14 million contract for 8 years. You got a EP right now at 11. He's locked in. However you feel right now about that being an overpay, it will feel less like an overpay as you move forward if you are a subscriber to the EP40's 100-point season as a fluke, and it will never happen again. But I would just say, like, we've seen enough out of his entire game at different points where we were like, oh my God, how does a two-way player put up this type of production. Like, we're talking about a guy that could probably do most things that Nate Danielson could bring to the table, but we've seen it produce just a smidge more. And I don't know. Like, isn't the prospect of whether you want to keep this first line or put EP and keep EP40, like put him between DeBrincat and Kane, or flip that up, change it up a little bit, have EP40 playing with Lucas Raymond, which is very likely, if that trade happened, like you'd want to see the two Swedes playing together. Then you hook up DeBrincat, Kane, and Larkin. Like, there are so many things here that make the roster make more sense, where you just have you have a really tough top six to beat 5-on-5. You already know you have enough here for a powerful power play. The offense will be there. You like to think that the defense is catching up, especially with what you're building, with Seider owning what he owns, Simon Edmondson, of course, the 2-goal night last night, but most certainly, like, coming to play every night in front of the net. Things they're starting to shore up a little bit, Mike. But I do think this conversation of like, let's just keep nickel and diming the prospects and hoping they work out, like, as well as we've seen Marco Kasper work out, like, incredibly well. But I don't know if you can keep rolling the dice on that. I don't know. I think there's a lot to like about this. I think I'll never stop tooting this horn. Up until the point like the no move clause kicks in. But yeah, I mean, like, we're what, a week and a half away from the trade deadline. I did put together slides for remind everybody about Karlsson. He just had a hell of a 4 Nations. He's like, it was kind of like one of those things where it was like, oh, if he has something to play for, he cares. Okay, that's interesting. Still brings a lot of offense to the table. Seth Jones, we've already talked about. Maybe that was it. Oh yeah, that was it. And then of course the EP40 stuff. So hey, there's the rentals.
Yeah, and I think I saw someone in there who's just a little worried about, allocating all that money into one person. Again, that cap ceiling is going to increase, so it's going to be less of a percentage of the total cap. And then, we got dudes coming off the books, especially also now that we don't have to pay, Ville Husso anymore. Poor guy. We got defensemen coming off the books. You're going to have, goalies coming out. You got room. And I mean, if you're putting it towards a guy who could score 100 points in a season, I mean, there's a lot worse ways to use that cap space. A la, taking 30-year-old centers and stacking them up like, hotcakes. So I know you guys are worried. There's a lot of concern about Pettersson having a poopy season, but it's such a mental thing. It's not like his body doesn't work anymore. He's just not having a great time. Oh man, where is this one going?
Matt throws out there, got enough defensemen that suck at playing defense. Big no on Karlsson.
Oh, yeah.
This is not, Mike, I'm telling you, this is the proof that this is not my burner account at this point, unless I'm just trying to feed like more show topics, because I could not be more of a fan of, like, if we could get some of that cap, retained by Pittsburgh, which I haven't even done the research if that's possible. How many?
They owe us one for Hossa, right? Have we gotten that receipt yet?
No. Let's see here. Matt, they have 2 contracts retained, including Mr. Jeff Petrie.
Yep. No, I would just say with Karlsson,
one more.
If they're going to retain a little bit, this team did really well with the Ghost Bear, so it'd be kind of interesting to have kind of a jacked up Ghost Bear on the blue line. No, he doesn't play a lot of defense, but it wouldn't be bad idea to have a super duper powerful power play. I'm just saying. Maybe the greatest power play ever assembled. Maybe. But yeah, Crimson, we can't really debate that he's a defensive black hole. Yeah, Okay. I'm just saying things look pretty good with the Ghost Bear, so just imagine Mega Ghost Bear.
Yeah, and it comes back to that conversation too we started a couple weeks ago where it was like trying to compare these long-term NHL contracts to like the you know, I hate Mike's gonna roll his eyes. You're all gonna roll your eyes, but like the mortgage industry, like you're not gonna
Oh God, here we go.
You're not gonna refi your house while the rates are high, kind of thing. But similar to that, like you can invest now in a longer term contract because that cap's going up and you still have talent attached to those longer term contracts. And like I mentioned before, like you talk about going to the free agent market possibly and like trying to woo Mikko Rantanen so that you can make him the highest paid forward in the NHL. Or there are contracts that are already signed and those are going to last for a while and you can trade for those suckers if they're available and treat that as your investment.
Jared put it very succinctly when he said, blah, blah, rocket, blah, blah, interest rates, blah, blah, Tom Selleck reverse mortgages. Thank you, Jared. That's how we snuff that out. That's what I like. Ooh, Dan B putting one in there that I like a lot. Karlsson he can nurture ASP. That is a tasty idea. Get him even better.
Thought, what we don't want Axel to be like Karlsson. He'll just score 100 points every year, be a defensive black hole.
Hey,
not that you're saying that, Dan B, but I mean, wouldn't you guys be freaking thrilled if Axel was Erik Karlsson?
Young Karlsson flying around the ice, being our best offensive player would be pretty cool.
Yeah. And that point being, like, to bring up Erik Karlsson was just that he played his nuts off in the Four Nations face-off. And I wouldn't necessarily say his competition got any easier, Mike, than he faces against Pittsburgh or as a Pittsburgh Penguin, because it was the best players in the world. So I don't know, guys. I saw a guy that sort of like turned it back on and was like, hey, if I got something to care about, if I got something to play for, hell yeah, I'm going to turn it back on. So I don't know.
Yeah, but Matt Burner, we're going to call you Burner Matt from now on, even though you're a real person with real opinions that I value. Matt does try to put it in perspective. He says number 2 PP in the league for our Red Wings. Only team better has McJesus. Karlsson doesn't move the needle for our 5-on-5 game, which is where we need help.
Really?
I would say that's not a bad point. I will say things started to turn around when the puck got out of our own zone quickly under McClellan, and Karlsson loves nothing more than to not play in his own zone. So it feels like he could still have some benefit for us. Let's see what he's got. Oh, even strike offense, Matt. Is that a 99? Woo-hoo-hoo.
Yeah, that's why I said really. Like I don't know. I don't know where that's coming from on Matt's side, especially considering it's a tough Pittsburgh Penguins roster to be a part of right now, and especially like struggling. But he's still.
It is a 0 on even strength defense, so yeah. Burner Matt does have us over a barrel on that one
for sure. Bend me over that barrel. But no, 5-on-5 offense would be improved here. Like, this is about puck possession. This is about not having to worry about being in the defensive zone, would be my argument for it.
By the way, I don't think either of us are making the argument that this is the final piece, but we have the cap space to make this a realistic move if we were doing other things too.
Yeah, and this one's, where we played the game.
Either of us think 34-year-old Karlsson is the final piece to this Red Wing playoff puzzle.
No, but I another huge element here too. Like we've brought up like the you can make Seth Jones work conversation, but the Erik Karlsson one is just for 3 years. It's not the same conversation that you have with Seth Jones, where I think you've got 5 years left on that contract. Yeah. So that one's rough. This is only 3 years. Maybe you get one good playoff run out of Karlsson. That's okay.
Burner Matt says, is Karlsson going to feed Axel off of those large Swedish nips?
Woo!
And then Jared's debating a teat joke. Jared, thank you for saying teat. Doesn't get thrown around enough.
Nope.
And then Brian saying Edvinsson looked good on offense, but his defense starting to crack. Well, he's had better defensive games, but it was pretty sexy seeing the goals go in. And then Dan B making the case if you have the puck, Karlsson. Then the other team doesn't. Yeah, it would have to. They'd have to retain a little. I like the idea too, Dan, but I'm not. If we made a move for EP40 and it made me, kind of nauseous with the picks we had to give up and the prospects, I could stomach it. But if we gave up that kind of remotely close package for Karlsson, I would probably be a little grumpy about it. Matt, Derek, we haven't heard from you all day. How you doing, bud? Saying, do you think the Wings could trade one of their bad contracts for EK65?
It's interesting, right? Because I think a couple months ago you would have said there's an easy bad contract, at least in Matt's opinion. But now what are we looking at, right? Are we talking about a bad comfort contract? Are we talking about Tarasenko? Because everything doesn't hurt too bad. Right? Because Cops made us feel good. We got the warm and fuzzies for Cop all of a sudden. So I don't know. It's tough. It's tough to put a finger on what is our worst contract.
It would have to be Comfort just in terms of length and where his production's at.
Yeah, I think you're right. It just kind of felt like as Todd McClellan had his way with the roster, he just sort of dropped off, became less necessary, less of an asset for us. But the number obviously doesn't change when that happens. But, go back to the cap increasing over the next few years. 5.1, it can be shit, Mike, in 2 years. So I don't know. I don't know. It's a good question. I think you'd have to make that a part of the conversation, right? You wouldn't have the conversation to take on Erik Karlsson's contract with Pittsburgh and then just be like, all right, we're good. See you later. Future considerations. We got you, bro.
Yeah. And then, is there one other one in here? Because I know we got to wrap up here, but Dan B says, worst contract is Abdelkader, $1 million for another year on a buyout. Thanks, Dan. Did we have any other slides for today?
No, we're all set. We were wrapped up a while ago, but
we're getting closer to that trade deadline. We got a hell of a schedule coming up. We got the big Stadium Series game on Saturday. And then, of course, we always put this out there, but I don't think Yzerman cares. If we actually make a trade, we're doing an emergency podcast. A real trade, not a Huso for future considerations.
If we trade for Kalen Addison, we're doing an emergency pod. Just for you, Brian. You know what? We'll just call in on the Discord. We'll just call you, Brian. We'll talk about how cool it is that we picked up Kalen.
We're gonna FaceTime.
I promise. This would be hilarious if we already traded for Kalen, and that's why Brian's been saying it all day, and I just haven't been paying attention to the Twitter.
It's just on us. Yeah.
Is that possible? Should I pull up the Detroit Red Wings Twitter just to make sure we haven't traded for Addison while we were? I can't even get the damn thing to pop up. All right, whatever. All right, thanks guys for coming aboard. We will we'll have more trade talk, hopefully more trade rumors in the next week here, or I should say a week from now. But also we'll wrap up that Stadium Series game. How sweet it was to look at those jerseys. And Mike, I still don't have mine, so
should have gone to the mall like I did. Woo!
I called the Little Caesars Arena Pro Shop, like it said in my email. And their response to me was, it was like a Jerry Seinfeld bit. They were like, which jersey did you get? And I was like, Lucas Raymond. They're like, yeah, we sold out of those pretty quick, but we did get a new box. So you should be getting, your shipping information sometime this week. And I was like, I pre-ordered it. Like I pre-ordered Lucas Raymond.
No,
I didn't.
We sold your
right.
pre-order. We sold your pre-order. You're welcome.
You know how to take the reservation. You don't know how to keep the reservation. I'll just take reservations willy-nilly. Sorry.
Well,
Somebody's
been watching a lot of Seinfeld reruns. Yep.
Thanks a lot, Little Caesars Arena Pro Shop. Appreciate it. All right.
Let's go.
We just make enemies with every sports. What was the other one that we made enemies with? I don't know.
We'll see you guys next week unless there's an emergency trade. Then we'll see you immediately.
Toodles.
All right. Peace.